you want to save money on your trading card purchases, we have a promo link over at 50cards.shop. Enter the promo code ATNIGHT to get 5% off your order. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to V to Premium Transitions, the show where we take a deck in V, show you how to turn it into Premium with not very many changes, and all that good stuff. I'm Atlas. I'm here with Mr. Timeleap. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. Overall, pretty excited to bring once again Gear Chronicle to this channel or to this group. Last time we were in a pretty interesting position because I think the last time was quite a while ago. Gears wasn't all too hot, but right now it's probably the most talked about thing, depending on which format you talk about.
Yeah, at the time of recording this, they took like what 9 of 16 top spots or something.
I think of almost all BCSs. I think either we won all of them or except for one, maybe.
Yeah, like a lot. Like it's the GOAT in V right now. It's kicking butt. So obviously the starting point of like, how do I make the deck in V? You know how to make the deck in V. It's the thing that's winning all the stuff. So going into the list here. Maybe for people who don't play Steam Maidens or haven't been completely curb stomped by them. Do you want to explain the strategy a little bit?
Okay, so to basically say it in as few words as possible, I know people that know me that sounds shocking, few words for me. Well, basically this deck is all about setting up your bind zone as fast as possible with specific units. So you have a whole line of grades, so you can have a grade 1, a grade 2, a grade 3, and potentially grade 4 or grade 0 in your bind zone. So you can multi-attack through the grades while you're basically progressing your attack chain. And you have your Steam Maidens that allow you to set that up or allow you to multi-attack. And then you have your boss unit that allows you to get free resources and then generate as many attacks as few counterblast as possible. And as added bonus on top of that, this deck has access to our favorite card in the community, which is Mellow Amusement Colossus, which gives you a Battledore guard restrict turn wide. So keep in mind, if we attack like 7 or 8 times, every single attack will have the Battledore guard restrict on top of it. And we have access to our superior guard mechanic that is the new grade 4 Uluru, which is essentially a G-Guard in V series, which is pretty nice. That's essentially the core mechanic of the deck in a nutshell. If you want to say this as a few words as possible, but of course, if you dissect the deck, it has a lot more in-depth things going on with how the multi-tech engine works with the grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3 Steam Maiden, and of course, our resource engine in the form of Lost Gear 8, Etrana, Gear Cat, Nabu, and of course, our grade 3 Illus.
Is there like a way to beat this? Like,
I mean, if you look at the deck how it works, it sounds like pretty insane because we can multi-attack for 1 extra attack per counterblast, but our grade 3 gives us a potentially counter charge, so you can attack 3 extra times for only 1 counterblast, or get 2 attacks for 0 counterblast. And we have a draw engine with Etrana, which, if you look at the research, is 1 counterblast for potentially +3. It sounds insane when you look at it just for raw numbers. But there are some issues this deck has, which is basically it's very piece reliant. If you don't see your pieces, don't see your specific multi-attack targets, the deck might lose out on potential early aggression. The deck also doesn't do a lot of pressure right out the gate on the first 2 turns. It starts ramping up from turn 3 onwards. If they don't see Colossus, their guard restrict isn't live. Now, granted, it's very hard to not get it, but there are definitely scenarios where it doesn't happen. So if you are a deck that is a lot faster than that, so let's say you can start attacking from turn 2 with aggression, and there are decks that can do that on turn 2, you can potentially pressure them out very early on because they are piece reliant, and if they cannot set up fast enough, they basically lose out on tempo. If you can damage deny them a turn, so you don't give them a potentially counterblast for Etrana, that's also a lot of resources they lose out in early game because, again, they are piece reliant, and if you deny them the potential +3, that's also pretty huge, similar to, let's say, Dark Irregulars for the turn 2 counterblast soul charge, or negating a Columbard for Grand Blue. That can also be pretty instrumental. This is similar now for Gear Chronicle with Steam Maidens. So if you have options to do that, or you have your own unfair win condition, like Dark Irregulars with hope on them, you can beat them out through that. If you are a grind game deck, unless you can draw an insane amount of cards, it is very likely that you are going to win it the moment they can set it up to just a small extent. Like, if you are a fair deck, you're probably not going to win it, but if you can rush them early on and that's in your core mechanic, or you have a superior guard mechanic like ghosties, for example, that can circumvent guard restrict, or you have a relatively consistent end game plan that with a really crazy good win condition like Hope on Damp, you have potential to beat this game or beat this deck on a more consistent rate than people would give granted to it. Because every time when I play this deck, Dark Regulars is always going to be a matchup where I'm sweating because I know there is a time limit. The moment I don't kill them before Hope on Damp hits the board, I probably lose the game if I don't have my Ulurus, or if I'm up against, like, I know certain early aggression rush decks like Spike Brothers, for example, they can beat me out to aggressive early game. If I up against those deck, if I am not winning the first 2 turns, I'm probably also not going to win the entire game. So there are definitely decks that can beat it out, but it's very specific.
Like, you keep seeing Leopold Reverse is like eking its way into top 4s a lot, which happy for me. But one way that that's able to be a thing is that, like, the early game of having things like Binoculus Tiger to either draw or pick off rear guards that try and rush you, it allows you to kind of keep up with the aggression or just, like, go face. Like, if you're going first as the Great Nature player, Leopold doesn't need the opponent's Vanguard to be at grade 3. So they can just be like, all right, cool. Guess I'll, everything counts as everything. I'm drawing. I'm blowing up your board. I'm giving 5k to front row. It's just, there's tools,
Yeah, and don't forget, the Great Nature also has access to an unfair guard restrict with Monoculus Tiger, which definitely can blow out. I've seen that card blow out so many players out of nowhere, and that's definitely a good win condition even against this. Like, we have Uluru, which can circumvent it, but it means you have to see Uluru. And some players don't really play 4-off. Some players only play 3. I've seen players only playing 2-off. So it is a thing that comes up.
Right, and the Piano Colossus that gives you, like, blanket Battledore, is it being at 1, has that ever been a problem where, like, you take it on damage early and then it's just stuck there?
Yeah, the reason I play this particular card only as a one-off is because in all the games I've played this deck, and I've played a couple of BCSs, I played it quite often also in my locals, or at least I don't have a locals, but when I play with friends and also online, I think I've played like 50 or 60 games with this deck. Mm-hmm. I've used this card maybe twice. It never... Really? Yeah, I know how instrumental this card is, and everybody's been saying, like, this is the main win condition. I've been winning most of my games, and I've hardly been using it. I think I've used this thing, like, twice, and it never came up in a scenario where I didn't win, that where it would result into me winning if I use this card. That never happened for me personally. So that's the reason. Yeah, so that's the reason why I've been advocating for banning this card, because personally it's no hit to me how I play the deck, and I know how it comes up. But the thing is, every time that I can search it out with, like, Lost Unigate, which is like the main reason why you can make it as a 1-off or 2-off, is because you can search out. But every time that I have this card, I'm forced to search out in the loop because I don't have her in my opening hand, and without her, you basically lose. So it's like these weird situations that specifically happens to me as a player.
Yeah, it's the thing that people are like, it's the lightning rod for everybody's hate. Like, that's the thing that's making the deck so broken. So with the piano, just having that for the entire turn, if you are able to multi-attack with that, you're shaving 2, 4, 6, 8 at the least cards every time. Which can just rip through hands in a second. That's also, like, Angel Feather's big win con in premium is that purple haired girl that it's like, all right, you got to guard with 4 more cards. I have 3 attacks, but 12 cards out your hand. Bye. Like,
yeah, the thing is, like, with the list that I'm presenting here, I personally have this thing on 1. And the reason why I said that some people play like her maybe at a 2-off is that they probably use this as a 2 and this also as a 2-off, because they really rely on Colossus to give you the win condition. Because the whole idea is that you place this on the field, get the guard restrict, and then you go from grade 0 into the grade 1 that allows you to get you another attack, which is 2 attacks. That's already 4 cards in hand. Then you go into the grade 2, which is 6 cards to guard. From the grade 2, you go into any of the grade 3s. That's 8 cards to guard. You have the Vanguard, that's 10, and you have another column that's 12. And if that's a grade 1 or grade 2, and you have more counterblast, that can be another attack. So it can be like 14 cards. And if they PG, that's another card on top of that. So if you do the math,
they're dead.
They're dead, essentially. that's if they are at 4 or 5 and you hit the Colossus on a turn like that, it's basically GG. Almost nobody has that amount of hand to guard, especially at late game. And if they do, that means they have no cards to do anything effectively against you, and you basically win the game, unless they have a deck that doesn't need hand to do their game plan. Like if they can build a board, or if they have a field and you don't touch the field and they can do with the field, you're basically also GG. Because the thing with this deck is, it has no field disruption. The only way that we can deal with your board is attacking directly into the units. That's all we have. So that's also a thing to keep in consideration. Like some players might tack a 1 or 2 of some field control option, because Gear Chronicle has that, but it's very iffy. But it doesn't really come up to as much.
Yeah, also, just in general, like Overdress and V don't see the hand size that Premium does, which is, like, just in general, if you've been watching this in the entirety of this series, Battledore effects and, like, things that shave more cards out of hand have a much bigger effect than they do in Premium. In Premium, the, like, Battledore effects are better either if it's, like, multiple things that have it, so it adds up, or if you know it's going to hit a PG, because that's already taking 2 cards, now it's 3. Sanctitude notwithstanding.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because the premium version of this deck, it's a complete 360 for me, because that's where the piano actually comes into play every single game, and it wins me every single game, because it's such a supercharged playstyle of what this presents in premium, which makes it kind of ridiculous. But
so why don't we take a look at it? What do we got going on for?
Okay, so Premium, I think this is the perfect timing for you to bring this series for Gear Chronicle specifically, because right now, as you can see here, this is the V version of the deck.
Yeah.
This is the Premium version of the deck. It's very one-to-one with, like, maybe of the 50 cards main deck, I would say maybe 10 cards are switched out for GR cards or for VR cards that are played in this deck. And this wasn't the case for Gear Chronicle before this. Like, we have Mystery Flare Dragon, but we don't want to talk about that no more. That's neither here nor there. But as you can see with this premium list, is that we still run the main grade 3 boss unit for Steam Maiden. We still run the Colossus as well. We still run the 4 of the Trana, 4 of the grade 2 Steam Maiden. We still have the Nabus in this list. We also have the Gear Cat. We still have the Eluse, as well as most of the trigger lineup is relatively the same, except we have stride triggers, but those are like the go-to thing in premium because they have premium style effects. The only difference that we see here is that we have some tech choices in the grade 1 and grade 2 lineup. We see TikTok Worker. I will go over that in a second, what that basically is. And we see Arlims as new main deck PGs, not trigger PGs. And we see a one-off Garunter as another option.
So now, Arlim was the unflip PG, right? If you have another copy and drop, countercharge you.
Yeah, this is the resource PG that we had at the beginning of the GR that we got for every clan.
Okay. And
there's 2 main reasons why that comes into play with this particular deck, but I will get to that in a second. So the main new addition to this playstyle is the introduction of Steam Maiden and Gilsa and the grade 4 Timeleap Dragon. So I don't know if this has been coming up in other videos in this series before, but with strides being a thing, there is this whole thing called the grade 2 gaming, where you try to not give your opponent the first stride, so you try to play on grade 2, pressure them with your early game, and then force them to ride up to grade 3 first, so you can stride on them first. And that's also what this deck to some extent tries to do. But this deck has an extra benefit on top of that, in the fact that we can actually ride to grade 3, because we have this card. This card is essentially the superior stride thing that we had in V with Chronojet, Chronofang, and Lost Legend. But the difference with this particular card is that this card can discard any card, so we don't have to discard a grade 3 to get the effect. So we can discard a grade 1 or grade 2 or maybe even trigger. And then we can go into any grade 4. But then what she does is that at the end of the turn, we ride a grade 2 from Soul or Drop. On
or
the
drop.
Yeah, or drop. So we will always end up back on a grade 2, thus our opponent cannot stride against us if we went first. So they have the force to either stay on grade 2 or then go to grade 3 and give us first stride while we just pressure them early on very heavily with our combo plays. And the thing is, because this thing writes from drop, that means we can just Soul Blast our grade 2s mid-combo for resources and then regain a Soul Blast by rewriting the exact same grade 2 from drop. So we get a soul for free every single turn, which is pretty good for resource management. Mm-hmm. And then for the main target for the grade 4 in this deck, we have Timeleap Dragon. This is mainly because this is a 0 counterblast play that gives us multi-attack and searches card from our deck. It allows us to get 4 attacks, and then we can call any of these grade 1s. So ideally, what you can do is you can call this Gear Cat, get the search, and then with Time Leaper, turn it into an Atrana, which gets you another cat, another search in the whole column with a massive column attack for no cost. And then if you want to get Vol value, this is the reason why you play a 1-off of this. Garuntar has the on-place effect where you can bot a card and then call another card with a grade higher. And this allows us to turn Time Leaper into a 5-attack combo turn instead of a 4-attack. But more importantly, this also allows us to bottom card from our opponent's side of the field, so we plus off of our opponent's field. So this gives us a disruption, which we lacked in the V version of the deck. So we can extend even further up on our opponent's board. And that's like the early game plan of this deck. Like, it sets up the same multi-attack pattern as the V version with the grade 1 and grade 2 Steam Maidens, but then it has the extra addition of Engilza to the early grade 2 game plan to deny our opponent's stride. And then once we enter the stride phase, that's where cards like Arlim and TikTok Worker comes into play, because TikTok Worker is a Time Leap card, and essentially it gives us a free extra attack that gives us soul. So whenever we start attacking, this thing can go to the soul and turns any card into any other card. And that's what you want, because every free attack for free means 2 extra guard from opponent's hand with Colossus once this thing hits the field. Mm-hmm. And great thing with TikTok is that Colossus is now searchable from any point of the game. We can get it from deck thanks to TikTok Worker. We can turn any grade 2 into Colossus mid-combo. If it's in our bind zone, we can get it mid-combo with something like an Alu. If it's in our drop zone, again, we can use this grade 2 to bind it from the drop, get it into the bind zone, and then get it mid-combo back from the bind zone as well. Which means, thanks to this card, not only do we get free attacks, multi-attack for Colossus for the guard restrict, it also means we now have access to Colossus at any point of the game from anywhere in the game. Which is like the main thing of this, what it wants to be. And on top of that, this also can turn any other card into a mission combo piece. So let's say, for example, you don't have the grade 2 for your multi-attack chain, but you do have the grade 1 and grade 3. Great. Just attack with the grade 1, don't use her skill, and just use TikTok Worker to bind her and get the grade 2 from deck. And we're there. We essentially did the same, but it didn't cost us a counterblast, and it gave us even a soul for free. Yes. Now, Arlim, what she brings to this table is that, as you already pointed out, she's a resource PG. So that means if we can have multiple Arlims, we can start to guard during opponent's turn if they stride. And then suddenly, when they want to damage deny us, we can end up with open counterblasts, or maybe multiple open counterblasts if we use them like multiple times in a single turn. And this is the reason why we run 3 copies, because the first copy will do nothing, and then the second and the third will give us counter. So that means we have 2 extra free counter charge while we are essentially surviving our opponent's turn. Mm-hmm. That's already nice. But that's not the main reason why she's actually really good for this deck. The main reason is because she's a Steam Maiden.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And he can essentially search her out for free. And believe me, that matters. That actually factually matters that she's a Steam Maiden. It happens to me so many times that I use this thing and just add 2 extra PGs in here and again to my hand to survive their stride. So even if you cannot win the grade 2 game, if you can use this cat to set up your perfect guards to survive their specific power plays, you're like comfortably guarding anyways. You're like, yeah, this is fine. We're Gucci. And so that's actually a really thing that comes up to play here. Then for the trigger lamp, this is the reason why we only play 1 of this, because we already have 3 of the main deck Arlims. And this is the reason why we also don't play 4, because I feel like 4 is a bit too much. You're taking too much space of your main deck for it. I think like 3 is like a magic number in this case. So that also means we're just running the 4 of this. But We do have the new. This list was made before in consideration of the new perfect guard that came in these trial decks. So
Sanctitude,
yeah. So probably gonna like try to get Sanctitude in the list. But if you don't have the space for it, you don't feel comfortable, you can just run her. Like I played this list. I played a variant of this list, but I will talk about it at the end of the video, like an addition that you can do, like a big change, that didn't run Sanctitude, because I forgot to put it in my list for BCS. And honestly, it didn't came up. I didn't need it. Never in the game did I felt like I needed Sanctitude to survive a turn. I lost my games because I overtriggered. That's literally it. That's literally all what it came down to.
I think Sanctitude has like such an intangible effect where, like, because you don't have to discard for the PG, it's like very few times where I've done it and been like, all right, I got around that guard restrict. It's always like I had the extra card in hand.
Yeah.
But that's hard to notice.
Yeah.
You know? So, because like it doesn't usually become apparent until like turns later or the game's over. So, and then like overtrigger, ban overtrigger. It's the Dark States one.
Yeah, so the triggers that we have is basically you have the Soul Draws crit, the Stride crit, and then this is specifically a mainstay in this deck. It's the Countercharge Bind crit. So this is like a very old critical from the ZTB era. You just place on the field, bind it, and you get a Countercharge. That's basically why you play it, to get extra Countercharge, because this deck goes through Counterblast very fast, but every single Counterblast means at least one extra attack. In some instances, even more, because it can allow you to get to combo pieces that can achieve you even more multi-attack. So you want to get as much Counterblast as soon as possible and as effectively as possible. But that will make more sense if we take a look at the G-Zone. So if we go to the G-Zone, we basically see a very similar list to most Gear Chronicle decks over the last couple of months, except for the main thing with Slishma now being an absolute mainstay of 4. Like, probably before Steam Maiden was a thing, I think Slishma was like an easy 2-off, maybe 3-off, you didn't need 4. In this deck, you need 4. This is your main combo player, your main game plan that you want to go in as first stride, maybe second stride. I've went to it even as first stride in a couple of games, because this thing gives you so much free value on top of it. So if V Steam Maidens already sound like ridiculous in the fact that you can go from a grade 0 into a grade 1, countercharge, then go into a grade 2, counterblast, have free attacks for 0 counterblast, if that already sounds ridiculous, this card can do that, but without any setup, essentially. And puts extra numbers up top of that, because this gives you 2 extra attacks and potentially 3 extra attacks because of her 2 skills. The first one is just you bind a front row unit and you call 2 new from your bind zone, so that's 2 extra attacks. And then if you attack with a grade 3, you can turn a grade 3 into her. She's face up in the G zone, which is another attack. So that already in itself is pretty good. But once you start looking at these cards, then you start realizing how ridiculous this actually is. Because if you have the Counterblast, you can do like the combo chain of this grade 1 into the grade 2, into a grade 3, and then have the another column to be like another grade 2 or something. But if you use Slishma, you can do that whole combo chain, then attack with Slishma, and reset that combo chain. Because you can essentially call a grade 1, and then call the grade 2 to both circles. And then you start attacking with the grade 2 into a grade 3, then the grade 2 is back into the bind zone, so now you can attack with the grade 1.
Into the grade 2, into a grade 3, and the grade 3
can also go into this grade 4. And if the grade 4 is on a force marker, so you went from grade 2 into grade 3, into this grade 4, now you attack with the grade 1, into the grade 2, on top of the grade 4 goes back to the G zone, grade 2, into the grade 3, into the grade 4 again.
Oh my god, that's so much margin for error in terms of like where you can mess up doing the combo. God, no wonder this clan is so like not niche, but just hard to master.
Yeah, you need to really understand like the intricate interactions between these cards to understand how much value you can generate out of every single specific card. And this is the reason why she is so important and why this card is so important, because it gives you the counterblast to do all those combo plays as consistently as possible. Because on your first stride, if you want to, you can just use her and do like a 1 or 2 counterblast play that achieves like 6 or 7 attacks. And you can just pressure your opponent a bit. And that can come off a grade 2 gaming turn with this card. Whoa. with discard into this thing. So you already pressured your opponent a little bit, shut them up to like 2 or 3 damage. Then you do display for 0 counterblast or like 1 or 2 counterblast to not overextend. And then on your kill turn, you use these triggers, you use your Arlims to give you 4 or 5 open counterblasts. And with those 4 or 5 open counterblasts, you just unload like a mayhem of attacks that just go ham on everything. And then on top of that, you have TikTok workers to even extend beyond that or to fix cards if you miss specific key pieces. And that's the beauty of this whole deck, that it can just pop up out of nowhere. Now, the crazy thing about this deck also is, Slishma is like your main plan, and it could be your kill potential. But if you really want to spice thing up, Dust can be your main kill. You can consistently second turn and potentially first turn stride Dust to kill your opponent. Because the fun thing about this, as you already explained, Colossus isn't as effective in Premium because like G-guarding is a thing. Dust denies
turns off.
Yeah, it turns off G-guard because you're at grade 1, and then every single counterblast or TikTok worker can basically be mayhem if you combine it with the Gear Colossus on top of that.
I think this is of all the Dark Stage clans that we have / will cover in this series, I think this is the one where Dust is the most effective. With Pale Moon and Spikes and DI, like, it's always like, this is really good, but like, it's there. Like, you can't really take advantage of that they can't G-guard thing like you can with this. Pale Moon a little bit, but most of the time their stride is the one allowing the multi-attacks to happen.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's all with the rear guards. So Dust can take care of the shutting off G-guards thing, and I know it's expensive, and I'm sorry. You can can you live without this, or
you can 100% live without Dust, because during the BCS, when I playtested the deck a couple of times, and during BCS Leeds itself, during playtesting I went into Dust and I lost because I went into Dust.
And you blow up your G-zone?
Yeah. You survived, and then I'm like, oh shit, I made a misplay. And during BCS, during one of the rounds, I'm like, I could be very funny and go into Dust. But I can tell you right now, I will lose if I go into Dust. So during the tournament, I only went into the Slishma essentially, so you can go without Dust. But there are definitely scenarios and use cases where Dust is your main win condition. And it's probably, if we're going to talk about, especially in Dark Zones, if there's one clan where you probably will say, Dust is probably actually going to need it because it comes up more often, it's probably this one. Because of like a whole variety of reasons. One of those reasons, which you already stated out there, with the fact that we can multi-tech with our rear guards and not mainly with our Vanguard skills. As we have, of course, TikTok Worker, our whole Steam Maiden engine multi-techs on our own. But also on top of that, once we have a face-up Slishma, that's also an extra attack on top of that. That's not Vanguard-centric as it's a G-Zone skill. But another very important aspect is that we can search our G-guards, because this is a Steam Maiden and we can search out just like Arlium with our Gear Cat. So in V, we can search it out because this is a combo play that we need to get set up in our bind zone. In Premium, that's also a potential thing, but not mainly. It's mainly because now we can search our G-guards as well on top of that, which is good. But there's another important aspect that doesn't apply to any other clan, as far as I remember, that applies to Gear Chronicle. And that's that we can G-guards without needing heals. So even if we do not see any heals, we can still go into a second stride Dust because Bearlock exists. Because if we have 6 grades on the field, we can bind 3 grades, G-guard with Bearlock, bind another 3 grades, and G-guard with Bearlock again, and have 2 GB face off once we already strode.
Is that bind 3 grades from field or drop, or
from field specifically? So if they don't touch your field and they go into the battle phase, and we have like a grade 2, a grade 1, a grade 2, and a grade 1, we can double G-guard. And I've done this. I have done this during BCS as well. And very important to keep in mind. It is a GB skill, so it cannot be your first G-guard, but if you have a heal, you can G-guard, then double Bearlock, and go into Dust first stride. Or if you strode, and you don't have a heal, you can do Bearlock, and potentially 2 Bearlocks if you didn't use a flip, and still go into Dust as second stride. And the reason why I specifically say grade 2, grade 1, grade 2, grade 1, to have like 3 grade and 3 grade, is because that comes up because we have discard in Gear Chronicle. In Premium, people have been saying Enterana is broken in V because it's a +3. In Premium, it's not only a +3, it's also a G-Guard.
That's really funny.
Because she calls a grade 2 and a grade 1, and then you can just use Bear Lock on top of that, which is essentially a 25k shield for free. So if they don't remove your Enterana, that's 25k shield you get for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can dust essentially, which is actually a very important interaction that definitely can come up in certain situations. And then essentially the rest of the G zone, we have just different use cases of G guards to have like different guard options and plays. Like this is very important because this is a TikTok setup. So you can just guard this, call TikTok from field, and next turn that means you have a free multi-tech. Mm-hmm. While also having 25k shield. This card is insane for that. Uluru can shuffle back triggers if you need them, or combo pieces if you have like specific surge targets from deck. So if you cannot get, let's say for example, Colossus is in your drop zone, but you cannot get it into your bind zone for some reason, but you have a TikTok, you can call it out, shuffle the Colossus back to deck, and set it up that way. And these are like different use cases for those particular interactions. And then Ragnarok Dragon is also a funny OTK turn, because if you know your opponent's entire hand is triggers, just try this and it's an auto win.
Yeah, it like back in the day where this was like supposed to be second stride, it was good, but like the thing where they're like, all right, no zeros, and you're like, well, PGs are grade 1, so cool. Yeah. Now, with draw PGs being what they are, like some clans running Sentinel crits, it's like a good amount of PGs will be like blanked by using this. And this is also why a lot of decks will tend to run not all draw PGs because of things like this. Because of things like this or Silent Tom or just anything, really.
Yeah, basically. Like, this thing is insane. Like, I've been overlooking this card for a long while, but after seeing it in action, it's really good. It's just a tech card.
It's really better now than it was back then.
Yeah, 100%. Because these things exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And then in terms of cost, like how much or like how expensive it is it to go from one format to the other, do you think?
Honestly, if you already have the V deck itself, it won't be that expensive to actually get the pieces. Like, I feel this got reprinted. I think this is like not even $1 a pop. Artems might be a bit pricey, but I feel like they are like $1 or $2 as well. And then in terms of the G zone, most of this stuff got reprinted like a multiple times. Bearlock was in like the revival in the latest reprint set. Most of these are like old rares, so like a buck a pop. The only thing that I feel like might be a bit expensive is Slishmas, because I think like maybe they're like $10 a pop.
I just looked, they're 10. I think they're the most one of the more expensive things. I think if you're gonna like do this or dust, do that. I think
100% do this. Like the thing about this card is as well is that this is gonna be a mainstay in the Gear Chronicle G zone probably for the end of time, because this is so free, so generic. It works in every single aspect in every single deck. So even if at some point you don't like this playstyle anymore, you're probably still going to use this in a different deck. So this is probably the best investment you can have for Gear Chronicle at this point.
I think any stride that has a G-Zone skill will always kind of have a place in most decks, because even if you're not using it for the card itself, you're using it like as flip fodder for other stuff. A good example is like Managarum Aurum in Great Nature, where like the effect to like mill 4 and get, you know, quad drive or whatever isn't really needed unless you're really, really behind. But that other effect where when your Vanguard attacks, you can Soul Blast and call something from hand, that thing's poggers.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, because they'll be like, I'll swing with stuff, and then my opponent's like, how many attacks are left? I'm like, I honestly don't know what to tell you.
It's like,
so it's kind of that same thing.
Yeah, it could be 1, but it could also be 20.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, so yeah, Schlishma. God, that is not an easy thing to pronounce.
No, it's not.
It probably fills that same role. Where, like, again, even if it's not being used for the stride effect, that G-Zone effect is still good. So why the hell not?
Yeah, it's the same thing that I still like have a one-off of discard in your deck. Like, history build is very similar to Slishma, but it's just different enough that it can come up in certain instances, and that's why it's like I run 4 of her and 1 of history build just in case where it comes up. where I need a card from deck.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that this is one of the decks where like the changes aren't that different. So
yeah, like I've with this variant, I've tried to keep it as similar as this list to make it easier to transition. But do not be fooled. You can take this deck in a whole plethora of different directions, and I will make it because I have a different build that I've been perfecting, so to speak. That I'm gonna make a dedicated whole in-depth video about it at some point in the future. But to give a hint to what you can potentially do with this list is you can combine this with Timeleap itself. And Timeleap is very similar to the Steam Maidens, where you have a multi-tech engine within itself. Only where Steam Maiden multi-techs from the bind zone, Timeleap multi-techs from the deck like we've seen with TikTok Worker. But you can take that up a notch with including the Elite Four and have this mixed mess of cards that allows you to multi-tech in every scenario and get access to any card, no matter if it's in the deck or in the bind zone, to increase the consistency. And on top of everything else, there are even multiple disruptions cards in engine, in archetype, that you can slot in to give this deck their own Hatro round. Because we all know Hatro round is Chronojet specific. And of course you have this card, Chimera Pandora, which isn't ideal, but we have
a back row tuck, which is I guess hitting what's it called? The cheetah in Spike Rose that can swing from back row. It's kind of nice, but
it's nice. But the problem is, if you read the card, it specifically say if you do, your opponent chooses a unit. So your opponent can still choose their most less hurtful card to tuck on the bottom of the deck. However, there is another card. It is a Steam Maiden that has a funny interaction with Bearlock. Because she has the effect, if she gets bound from a rearguard circle, you can choose one of your opponent's rearguards and put it on the bottom of the deck.
Oh, nice.
So if you pay the cost for Bearlock to bind it, so you even use just as a cost, you even get to spin a card from your opponent's side of the field.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, the interesting thing about the particular card as well is that it doesn't specify by your card effects. So you could just call down the field and basically stare at an Narukami player dead in the eye and say, "I dare you! I dare you to stun verse my field."
That's really funny. I love that they're this is a clan that has so much depth and complexity to the deck building. This is what tickles my little deck building nerd heart. But if you want to see more stuff like this, check out Mr. Timeleap's channel because you go deep. And as always, the deck logs for these will be in the description if you want to look at the cards more closely. Leave a like, leave a comment. Thanks everybody for watching. Mr. Timeleap channel will be in the description and his social media and all that stuff. And we'll see you next time. Bye everyone.